Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole and it's by user Leo Bastion. Am I the a-hole for not making my son forgive my brother after he was uninvited from his wedding? 6 months ago, my son Leo, 14 male, decided to cut off my brother Jack, 46 male. Now, my mom, brother, sister-in-law, and other family members want me to make my son forgive him to keep the peace. For a little bit of context, I'm 46 male, a single dad. My family has always helped me in many ways, mostly babysitting when Leo was younger. And even before my son was born, we were all very close. We all live relatively close to each other, so we've been able to keep in touch with weekly gatherings, spending the holidays together, etc. Everyone loves my son, and my son loved them back. However, my brother Jack was always my son's favorite person. Back when my son was 3 to 4 years old, Jack and his wife had more flexible jobs than me. Think freelancing versus a 9 to 5. So they always volunteered to look after Leo, something he loved. Almost every month they would take him to the zoo or the aquarium, or they'd even go camping with him. As my son grew older, he started to develop the same interests as my brother, like video games, photography, and music. When Leo was 9, he told me he wanted to have the same career as his uncle. This is all to say they were extremely close. So last year, my brother informed me that he and his girlfriend Mary were getting married. I knew that neither Jack nor his girlfriend believed in marriage, so when I asked them about it, they told me it was all Karen's idea, my sister-in-law's mom. Because Jack and Mary didn't care much about the wedding, and since Karen was paying for it, they let her plan everything, from the venue to the food, music, etc. Karen decided to plan a destination wedding to a fancy resort. Then, in July of last year, we received the invitation and it was addressed to both me and my son. I even had a +1 if I wanted. And as soon as the website went up, I tried to make a reservation for our hotel room. I should clarify that I had to call the hotel to make my reservation because the link wasn't working and I really couldn't risk not getting a room. When I received the email confirmation, it said room for 2 adults, but I didn't think much of it and just assumed it was an error due to the language barrier with the hotel guy. I also bought the plane tickets for us around the same time. Fast forward to January, less than a month before the wedding, when my sister-in-law called me crying, saying that Karen had made a mistake with the venue. Apparently, the resort was for adults only, so they didn't allow anyone younger than 16. My son was 13 at the time. I asked her if it could be possible for Leo and me to stay in another hotel, but they told me the whole resort was child-free, so my son wouldn't even be allowed to attend the ceremony or the reception. I was disappointed and I told my sister-in-law I'd talk to my son about it. I knew how excited he was about his uncle's wedding. But she insisted both her and Jack wanted to tell him in person. Honestly, my son was devastated. He started crying as soon as he was told he wouldn't be able to go. He pleaded with them and even offered to give them all of his savings so they could move the wedding. After 30 minutes of this, my sister-in-law got frustrated and just told him that he was being selfish and that this day wasn't about him. Leo eventually apologized and went to his room. After the wedding, my son just stopped talking to my brother. If Jack sent him a message, Leo would just ignore it unless it had something to do with me. For example, he would only reply if Jack asked him to tell me something because he couldn't reach me, etc. On our family gatherings, Leo would only respond to small questions like, "Can you pass the salt?" or "Help grandma with the plates." But he would ignore my brother if Jack or Mary tried to start a conversation to ask him about school, etc. A month after the wedding, Jack and Mary offered to take him for a special vacation during spring break to make up for the wedding, but my son just ignored them and he later told me he didn't want to go with them. It was heartbreaking because I knew how much he wanted to go to that place and I wasn't able to afford it yet, but he stuck to his guns. Something similar happened on Leo's birthday. He asked me if I was planning to throw him a party. I do it every year. And when I said yes, he asked me not to invite his aunt and uncle. I tried to convince him to invite them because they're family and they were really sorry, but he just said that if they didn't want him on their special day, he didn't want them on his. My brother was crying when I told him he wasn't invited. However, things came to a head this past weekend. We were at my mom's house and the conversation of Leo's university came up. My mom asked Leo if he was still planning on going to the same university as Jack and that he should start planning for that. But my son replied that he wasn't interested anymore and he had chosen to study something else. Then my mom said, "I thought you wanted to be like your uncle." And my son just said, "Why would I want to be like him?" At this point, I intervened and told Leo he didn't have to be so rude, but the damage was already done. Both my brother and sister-in-law heard what he said and they left shortly after. Last night, my brother texted me saying I was an a-hole for letting my son continue with this grudge, and he even accused me of being jealous of their relationship, and that's why I wasn't doing anything to fix it. I just told him these were the consequences of his actions and that this was 100% his fault by allowing his piece of crap mother-in-law to plan the wedding when she obviously hated my child. Then he hung up on me. My mom and other family members think I should force my son to forgive my brother so we can all move on, claiming there was no ill intent and it was just a small mistake. But I don't think I should. My son was clearly hurt and he should be allowed to heal and forgive them when he's ready. So, am I the a-hole? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. You are doing right by your son. And just to get it out of the way, whatever your mom or other family members think is a moot point, or like Joey Tribbiani would say, a cow's opinion. It's irrelevant. Apparently, none of your family or your brother in particular understand how forgiveness and apologies work. You can offer an apology, but it is up to the person who was hurt if they accept it or not. Your son is not ready and you cannot force that. Now, I don't know what the deal is with your brother's mother-in-law in this story because you only refer to her twice. When she chose the venue and then at the end when you call her a piece of crap because she hated your child. I don't have much context to understand what's going on there if there's more to this part of the story. Your sister-in-law's mom planned and paid for the wedding and made all the decisions and your sister-in-law just never knew anything about it? I'm sorry, but I'm not buying that one. Then she waited to the last minute to call you crying and telling you that her mom made a mistake. Yeah, I'm pretty sure your sister-in-law knew about it and just didn't say anything. Anyways, OP, not the a-hole. And what is your opinion? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments. Spiritual Tar Heel says, you cannot force someone else to forgive another person. Your child was hurt. You can talk to him, but you can't force your son to forgive. The more people try to make your son, who is only 13, forgive him, the angrier he is going to get. And OP responds, this is one of the reasons why I don't want to force an apology out of my son. To be honest, I don't think he'd even listen to me. Throwaway 2648 says, not the a-hole. I have a hunch this is less about the wedding and more about the conversation where they called him selfish. To me, that conversation would have done enough damage to ruin the relationship. I'm guessing they never apologized to your son for saying the things they said or reacting the way they did. He trusted them, and instead of them helping him process this extremely upsetting thing that was their mistake, they called him selfish and yelled at him and effectively ruined their relationship. They are the adults. If they want to fix the relationship, they need to stop trying to buy him and they need to start apologizing and making amends for the hurt and discord they caused. Your son wasn't rude when he said he didn't want to be like his uncle. He was answering a question honestly. No one should put him in a position to give an honest answer he would get in trouble for. That's incredibly crappy on the adults to do, especially when you called him rude. You are the a-hole for that. Get him some therapy. He's been betrayed by some of the most important people in his life. Your son is the only one, not the a-hole in this situation. You should apologize to him as well for calling him rude when he wasn't. And Aggravating Style 544 says, not the a-hole. I think your sister-in-law getting frustrated with him and telling him he was being selfish was the proverbial nail in the coffin. He was already upset and hitting the bargaining stage of grief for not being allowed at the wedding, and she basically kicked him when he was down. And your brother stood by and let it happen. Leo will never forget that. So the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole and you just can't force forgiveness. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. I appreciate everyone who took the time to comment and send me messages. Some may have been a bit harsh, but I deserved it. Thanks for slapping some sense into me. The short version is that we'll stop going to the family events for a while. I talked to my brother and he will respect my son's boundaries, and he also explained what really happened. And above all, Leo is doing much better now. Here's the longer update in case anyone's interested in the details. My mom and sister. The short of it is that I informed my mom that both Leo and I would stop going to the family gatherings until things calmed down, and more importantly, until he felt comfortable again. She was understandably upset, but I think she finally understood how much she had been hurting Leo. What surprised me is that my mom told me that Jack had become depressed, so she was worried about him, and that's why she was so insistent that Leo should forgive him. I basically told her that if we forced Leo to forgive my brother, we risked pushing him away from us. As for my sister, she was also sad when I told her we'd stop going to the family gatherings, but she said she understood. However, she suggested we make our own weekly tradition so the children can still hang out, and that's what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. We decided my nieces and nephews would come to my house one week and then Leo would hang out at hers the next. So far, it seems to be working and Leo is happy with this arrangement. I think it helps that he isn't being pressured by the adults expecting him to talk to his uncle. Jack and Mary. The weekend after I posted here, I texted my brother asking him to meet me so we could talk. I had told him that I wanted to speak with him alone so Mary wasn't present. Jack immediately apologized and said how much he regretted what he had done and the things he had told me. He confirmed what I already suspected and said he was stressed because of the constant fights with Mary. He mentioned that he had considered divorce because of how bad the fights got. I may seem cruel here, but I basically told him that I didn't care about that. What I wanted was for him to tell me the truth about what the hell had happened. Jack maintains that he didn't know about the venue being child-free until last November. However, like many of you suspected, Mary had known for quite a while, maybe even the whole time. Apparently, this all started a few years back when Jack and Mary took Leo to the beach. While they were playing, my son had accidentally called Jack Dad before quickly correcting himself. From what Jack told me, it was a small mistake, like when you call a teacher mom. Leo was embarrassed, but Jack just laughed it off. The catch? Jack's mother-in-law, Karen, and father-in-law had joined them for that vacation, and they overheard Leo when that happened. When they came back from their vacation, Karen had gone ballistic, claiming she was triggered by some random kid calling Jack Dad, knowing that Mary can't have children. Mary had tried to explain it was just a misunderstanding, but Karen became extremely toxic and abusive towards Mary, and she started making demands like not having Leo over when Karen visited, etc. So when Jack and Mary decided to get married, and since they initially just wanted to elope and not have a party at all, Karen manipulated Mary and convinced her to let her plan the perfect wedding for her only daughter. Mary gave in because she was so sick of several years of emotional manipulation and she just wanted to keep the peace. So Karen hijacked the wedding and she chose the child-free venue on purpose. Mary discovered this when the venue was booked or shortly after, but she didn't say anything because every time she tried to argue, Karen would play the victim and stuff. Mary claimed that she had tried to negotiate with the resort that an exception be made so the children could attend the ceremony and reception even if they stayed in a different hotel, but the manager stood firm on the policy. But the closer they got to the date, the more anxious she got until she finally admitted the truth to Jack in November. According to my brother, Mary exploded to Leo because of all the constant bullying and manipulation from her own mother, and she also felt extremely guilty by letting things get that far. For his part, Jack said that if he had found out before, he would have stepped in and cancelled the wedding rather than exclude Leo and my sister's children. But by that point, a lot of people had already booked their flights and hotel rooms, so cancelling wasn't an option. In the end, I told my brother that none of that excused the way they had behaved, especially his wife. She was a 40-plus-year-old woman picking a fight with a kid. She had yelled and called him selfish when all Leo wanted was to offer the £2,000 he had saved so he could be a part of Jack's special day. I reminded him that Leo looked up to him and considered him his hero, and he had let him down. He had shown Leo that he wasn't important to him the way Jack was important to Leo. I also told him that I would keep supporting Leo on going no contact, and I'd be going low contact with him myself. He asked me for a chance to apologize to Leo, but I told him he had already apologized. All he could do now was wait to see if one day my son would accept his apology. Jack seemed hurt, but he told me he would respect our wishes and give us time and space. As for my son, I apologized for not standing up for him and forcing him to meet with the family every week. I told him that he could decide what he wanted to do with that part of the family going forward. He seemed reluctant to stop going, but I let him know that I would support him no matter what and that I wouldn't be upset. What made me happy was that Leo suggested we could stop going to the family every week and instead we could spend more time together, he and I, doing some of the things he used to do with my brother. Last week we went to a vintage car show and next week we're going to watch Wicked. I'm not a theater guy, but it sounds fun. I also told him I was worried he had stopped doing the things he liked and that he shouldn't stop just because he had a falling out with someone he cared about. Basically, I told him it was okay to still enjoy things by himself or with someone else. He admitted he actually wanted to do those things but stopped just to spite Jack. I decided to give him an early Christmas gift and bought him some games he had been excited about but that he had refunded after his fight with my brother. He even convinced me to play with him some Final Fantasy Online game on his PS5 while he plays on PC. I admit I have no idea what I'm doing on that game since the last Final Fantasy I played was still in 2D, but he seems to enjoy watching me fail. Finally, we decided to take a trip to his dream destination for my birthday. I was a little bit sad because it's going to be the first time in almost 50 years that I don't celebrate a birthday with my brother, but I've got my son and that's all that matters. So yeah, Leo is happier and less stressed about the family. Speaking of which, I think the family is finally respecting our boundaries, so that's good too. I just hope my brother can work on his marriage. I may hate what they did, but I do want him to be happy. Well, OP, it sounds like it's a positive update for you and your son. I don't think the relationship with your brother is ever going to go back to how it was unless your brother properly apologizes and your sister-in-law comes clean to your son and apologizes for her not being strong enough. And instead of standing up to her toxic mother, she lashed out on a child. But that doesn't really matter to you or Leo because it's something that Jack has to deal with. So on that note, here's wishing you and Leo the best in the future. Hopefully you have fun at your trip. Take care and thanks for sharing. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user Floating a Waste. Sprained ankle. Boss wanted a doctor's note to pay 1 day of sick time, now he's paying a week. I twisted and sprained my ankle Monday morning packing up our camp from Labor Day weekend. Having done this a few times in the past, I didn't want to bother to have it checked out. Who wants to pay $1,000 for urgent care to tell you to rest and ice it? Yay, America. So I went to work Tuesday. I got morning stuff done and explained the situation to my boss. Told him I'd need to take the day because it was swollen and painful and I needed to rest and be off of it in order for it to heal. He gets in a tizzy because God forbid anyone needs to miss work for anything at all ever, and snaps at me for not planning to go to the doctor. Wednesday, I go into work, still limping and still wearing improper footwear. I can only fit the injured foot into a crock without unbearable pain. The first thing the boss says is, "Don't you think you should get that checked out? I don't understand why you don't want to just pay for it." I explain again that I've had this injury in the past. It's definitely not broken and honestly not even as swollen as it has been when I've done it before. I want to be at work to keep up on things and make everyone's job less difficult. I would just need to take it easy for a couple of days, which isn't a problem considering I can do 90% of the job from my desk and the 10% slack is beyond easy for everyone to pick up. This gets met with more attitude, so I ask if I'll be getting paid sick time for the day I missed yesterday. He says no, not without a doctor's note. You can visibly see the injury clear as day, and I'm trying here, so what the F? I'm fed up by this point, so a little later on I say okay and leave to go to the doctors for the note he wants so badly, knowing full well what they'll say to treat it and that I'll need to be off of it for 3 to 5 days. After an x-ray and getting the, "Yup, it's sprained, keep doing what you've been doing," I let them know my boss asked for a note for missing a day for work to rest it. Doc asks if I want to be at work to do what I can and stay off of it as best as possible. I said that's what I've been trying to do, so I'm fine with that. I do have sick time if it would be more beneficial to be off of it for a couple of days. She comes back with a note that I may return to work next Monday. I took a picture and shot it over to the boss man, just a photo. He replies, "What's wrong with the ankle?" Which I met with no response considering none is needed. He got his note. I just wanted a day of sick time, 8 hours. Now he's paying me 4 days, 32 hours. He can't refuse a second of it. Well, OP, he wanted a note, he got a note, and now he needs to scramble to pick up what you can't do. Sucks to be him, but that's his problem. Thanks for sharing, OP, and get well soon. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.